Prepare to encounter revelations that may overturn your perception. What you are about to learn will not be pleasant or easy to understand. It may make you doubt your established views of yourself, those around you, and the world in general. This isn't about motivation or truths covered in beautiful words, but about a direct and necessary blow. Perhaps you've had the feeling that you know more than you can express, as if you hold a truth within you that no one is ready for. And you doubt whether it's worth revealing. This is not a coincidence or paranoia, but an instinct that for centuries has taught the wise to remain silent amidst the cries of the crowd and to observe when others open up. This inner voice warns, don't reveal your cards. In a world where everyone strives to know everything about you, those who know how to keep silent gain power. If you feel discomfort, it's a good sign. It means that the upcoming information will affect your need for understanding, recognition, and acceptance. Think about it. How often have you been ruthlessly frank, only to receive rejection, ridicule, or even betrayal in return? Remember how many times you, driven by a sincere desire to get closer to someone, shared the truth and instead became a vulnerable target for attacks? This is exactly what happens because sincerity does not always bring liberation. Sometimes it is tantamount to suicide. And the most paradoxical thing is that from childhood, we were taught the opposite, instilled with the idea that truth is a virtue that should always be made public. However, the wise Machiavelli long ago grasped a truth that you may not yet fully realize. Truth is not a right, it is a powerful weapon. And those who do not know how to use it correctly, who do not understand when to expose the truth and when it is wiser to hide it, are doomed to become mere pawns in someone else's game. Every word you say, every manifestation of openness and vulnerability, carelessly demonstrated to the world, is recorded and saved. Perhaps this does not always happen consciously, but the information does not disappear, and sooner or later, someone will be able to use it against you. In modern society, information has lost its value as such. It has become a tool of domination. People are no longer interested in knowing the real you. Their goal is to measure you, find your weaknesses, points of vulnerability, in order to use them for their own purposes. And if you are not ready to accept this fact, then be prepared for an endless repetition of the same scenario. Trust, openness, and as a result, a painful blow. However, the viewer did not come here to listen to complaints. This video is not a place to heal emotional wounds. Rather, it is a mirror exposing reality, a sharp knife revealing the truth, and an annoying alarm clock that cannot be ignored. The author intends to express what many prefer to keep silent about. The modern person is excessively open. The danger lies not in actions, but in what people reveal about themselves, sometimes unconsciously. Life has turned into an exhibition where everyone can become a spectator, often without suspecting who is watching. This is where the threat lies. Predators do not warn of their intentions. They do not bark, do not criticize, but patiently observe in silence, waiting for the right moment. The most insidious thing in this situation is that while a person shares information, predators learn. While he talks about his fears, they study how to use them. While he pours out his soul on social networks, they assess his vulnerability. In the age of universal chatter, silence has become the most serious threat. The truth that a person so fiercely defends, the one that burns inside and bursts out without a filter, becomes the most obvious weakness. Niccolo Machiavelli, a perspicacious political thinker of the Renaissance, long before our time, grasped the fundamental principle of power. Its foundation lies not in the unconditional proclamation of truth, but in the ability to determine the appropriateness of its disclosure, and more importantly, in the ability to keep it secret. There are circumstances when truth is likened not to illuminating light, but to destructive explosives. A carelessly thrown word can turn into catastrophic consequences. Therefore, it is wrong to consider silence a manifestation of cowardice. In reality, silence is a strategic tool, a sign of intelligence, and a guarantee of survival. People who do not master the art of silence are not capable of domination. If someone still naively believes that sincerity will ensure their inviolability, they should think about what will happen next. It will not just be about understanding the truth, but about its practical application, about turning it into a reliable shield, a sharp sword, and a graceful art. Welcome to a world where external impression often surpasses true intentions, where the truth is not shouted aloud, but dosed with special care. Every word spoken can become either a deadly bullet or a life-saving rope, and it is the speaker who decides who will be shot, or worse, who will be hanged. The main enemy of truth is not outright lies, but uncontrolled transparency, people's manic desire for total openness, for exposing every thought, every feeling, every mistake to public view. They believe that this will make them more human, real, and trustworthy. However, they do not realize that by doing so, they are abandoning the only power that has true meaning, the power of mystery. Truth, devoid of measure, loses its value. A person who exposes themselves without any filters loses their advantage. In modern society, there is a disturbing trend. Authenticity is increasingly identified with boundless emotional openness. Sincerity is believed to lie in the continuous exposure of feelings, the demonstration of all aspects of life, and a stormy reaction to every event. Many seek to share their failures, disappointments, and inner emptiness, mistakenly believing that this helps to establish strong connections with others. However, this strategy does not lead to the desired result. Instead, a detailed profile of vulnerability is created, which records all weaknesses and limitations. The logical question arises: who is the collector of this valuable information? As a rule, it is not close friends, not partners, and not even the audience that a person naively tries to inspire. Data is collected by those who prefer to silently observe and skillfully listen in order to further use the information received in their own interests. It is these people who realize that in the modern world, possessing information is tantamount to controlling the situation. In this regard, another, no less dangerous problem arises: the illusion of a safe space. This psychological phenomenon that makes a person believe in the possibility of complete self-disclosure without any negative consequences. It seems that you can freely pour out your feelings without fear of retribution for your frankness. However, one must recognize the harsh truth. An absolutely safe environment does not exist in principle. Even in relationships with the closest people, there is always a risk, since everyone at some point puts their own interests first. And if those around them do not know how to properly dispose of the candid information received, they can inadvertently use it to harm. The tragedy of the situation lies in the fact that many people realize this pattern from their own experience. They have already faced the negative consequences of excessive frankness, but continue to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. They continue to share intimate thoughts and experiences, hoping that this time they will be understood and accepted. They believe that this time they will not be betrayed. However, they do not realize that the problem lies not in those around them, but in their own inflated expectations and naive belief that vulnerability will make them invulnerable. Skillful strategists avoid such difficulties because they have the ability to keep their feelings under control and are in no hurry to share intimate thoughts. They do not consider it necessary to explain their actions or make excuses, realizing that restraint and the ability to keep secrets is not a manifestation of weakness, but a powerful tool of control. Silence for them is not the absence of thoughts, but a carefully developed tactic. Often refraining from revealing the whole truth turns out to be more profitable than rashly disclosing information. After all, unskilled handling of information can lead to undesirable consequences and exposures. In this regard, another important aspect arises, which is often overlooked: emotional debt. This hidden danger arises at the moment when a person opens up their innermost secrets, hoping for understanding and support in return. However, unfortunately, most people are not ready for such frankness and do not know how to properly dispose of the information received. Worse, many do not even strive for deep understanding, but, having gained access to personal truth, they involuntarily feel power over another person. Thus, a person, without realizing it, becomes a hostage of the situation. This is not about direct blackmail, but about psychological dependence, arising from the feeling that they are now known, that another person has a part of themselves. It is here that fear arises, limiting freedom of action. A person begins to fear that their secrets will be revealed, and this shackles their movements, forcing them to constantly look back in anticipation of exposure. In life, a paradoxical scenario often unfolds. A person naively believing that frankness will bring them liberation, in the end, only transfers the reins of their life into the hands of others. The irony is that to establish control over a person, betrayal in an obvious form is not always required. Sometimes, merely recognizing the potential for such betrayal can give an opponent a significant advantage. This raises a fundamental question. How often does a person feel indebted to others simply because they possess information about their deepest secrets? How many important decisions remain unmade for fear of personal data being revealed? How often has one had to restrain oneself, not out of moral considerations, but out of fear of the consequences? And most tragically, how many actions, contrary to one's own will, have been committed solely to protect the very truth that one once voluntarily disclosed? This is the true cost of thoughtless candor. It's not about external judgment, but about self-censorship, about turning into the warden of a prison constructed with one's own hands in the mistaken belief that transparency brings freedom. However, true freedom lies not in the unrestrained outpouring of thoughts, but in the ability to determine with surgical precision what, when, and to whom to speak. Truth, devoid of control, turns into a slow-acting poison. This realization comes too late, when a person becomes emotionally dependent on others, not using their revelations against them. Life becomes a constant breaking, a fear that the very honesty one so praised will become the main threat. That's why Machiavelli's teachings are not cynicism, but insight. He was one of the first to realize that unshared knowledge is concentrated power, that unspoken emotions are not suppression, but protection. Truth, contrary to popular belief, is not a sacred cow, but a valuable resource that must be skillfully managed. In an era of universal openness and information overload, the greatest danger comes from those who prefer silence to verbosity. These are people who can listen and observe, keeping other people's secrets under lock and key, not betraying themselves with a single gesture. They possess the art of waiting, showing tact and restraint, because while others talk, they analyze. While others shout, they make decisions. And when it seems that the situation is under control, it's actually too late. It should be remembered that truth is a valuable resource that is not given for free. Not everyone deserves to possess it, and not everyone knows how to use it correctly. There is no obligation to share your innermost thoughts with every person you meet. The world is structured so that it is not the one who flaunts themselves unadorned who succeeds, but the one who knows when to hide their true intentions, who knows how to act covertly, remaining in the shadows. There is nothing more dangerous than the silence of a person who knows everything but says nothing. If everything above seems like an exaggeration, you should ask yourself, what was the last truth spoken aloud that you later regretted? The darkest thing in this situation is that even after realizing the full depth of what has been said, there's still a part inside that resists, that naively believes in the possibility of being absolutely honest and remaining unharmed. This part of the soul desperately wants to shout out its truth, hoping that this time there will be someone who will understand and accept it. Allow me to dispel a common misconception with surgical precision. Not every person deserves to know your true essence. Not everyone should be given access to the most intimate corners of your personality. It should be clearly understood that there is a colossal difference between sincerity and naivety, for which you have to pay a very high price. People show interest in your life, but not out of a sincere desire to care for you. They are driven by a desire to assess your capabilities, understand the boundaries of what is permissible in communication with you, and determine the degree of your controllability. If you provide them with all the necessary information, reveal the full picture of your inner world, including emotions and weaknesses, then do not expect respect. Instead, they will try to establish control over you. In this complex game, the one who reveals more information about themselves risks losing more. It's time to realize the harsh truth. To be sincere It is not necessary to put all your feelings on display. To have depth, full self-disclosure is not required. Sometimes silence is not an omission, but a conscious statement, an impregnable wall, a code that only a wise person can decipher. Concealment is not a manifestation of coldness, but rather a high level of protection, a well-thought-out emotional strategy, and a selective approach to survival. And there is one more important aspect that should be mentioned, but which few are willing to accept. Your story does not have to be understood by everyone to remain real. Your truth does not require universal approval to exist. Your mission is not to be explained, but to create something so durable and significant that it does not need words to confirm its value. Most people have an insatiable thirst for recognition, but true creators of power prefer to operate in the shadows, guided by their own laws. They don't need to explain their every move. They simply move forward, leaving behind a trail that makes the earth tremble. The time has come to make decisions that will determine the future path. Will a person continue to waste themselves on those who are unable to appreciate this sacrifice and show due care? Will the naive belief persist that a person's worth is determined by the understanding of others? Or is it time to start creating inner strength, quiet, selective, and ultimately devastating? It is today, if you have the courage to accept this challenge, that a transformation, a true mental evolution, will begin. A person will learn to remain an unnoticed observer, listen attentively, speak slowly, analyze instead of reacting impulsively, conserve energy and dose manifestations. And one day, those around them will surely notice. They will feel something changed, elusive. They will realize that they can no longer read minds like an open book, that access to the innermost world is closed. And at that very moment, without a word, victory will be won. This message ends here, but perhaps a new life begins here. A life in which there is no need to open your soul to everyone you meet, but only the need to create your story with such filigree precision that anyone who comes into contact with it has no choice but to feel respect, without fully understanding how it was achieved. And if the reader has reached these lines, it is no coincidence. This means that something inside is ready for mutation, for transformation into a creature that is more strategic, calculating, and dangerous. It is important to leave your mark on history, but not as a deafening cry of despair, but as a quiet, barely perceptible sign that no one will see, but everyone will feel as a harbinger of the coming storm. So listen carefully. If what you have seen has touched the deepest strings of your soul and caused internal changes, you are invited to go to the comments section and leave the phrase, "Power is not spoken, it is felt." This will be a sign of belonging to the elect, ready to change the established rules of the game while remaining in the shadows. If there is a desire to continue to nurture that part of yourself that does not crave fame, but strives for unlimited power, subscribe to the channel. However, it should be understood that the content here is not intended for the general public. The goal is not motivation, but deprogramming. The author says goodbye until the next video, admitting that some viewers have already reached a different level of development, where silence becomes the most eloquent voice. He ends the broadcast, but encourages you to continue moving forward without unnecessary noise, remembering that the creators of history do not ask permission. They leave behind an echo that cannot be ignored.